Good evening, all of you who are here with us physically, and also to all of you who are on the internet sharing this program with us. We begin a new series of Living Theosophy, as Joe said. This subject is about the evolutionary pilgrimage of the divine spark through the cosmos and through the different experiences that it has to face. And we are going to try to see this subject both from the point of view of the theory, the metaphysics of the subject, and also from a practical point of view. So we will start with a more theoretical approach that will set the background for the theosophical view on evolution. There are different views on evolution in different traditions. Some of them don't have any particular view of evolution. Usually in Christianity, for example, there is not the idea of a progressive evolution. In Hinduism and Buddhism, there is a certain idea of evolution, although it's different from the theosophical one. The main idea is the actions that we produce are keeping us coming back to Earth. We have to learn how to stop producing these actions that binds us to Earth, or how to change our consciousness so that the actions don't bind us. And what we could call evolution is the learning and the developing of skills to do this. In the theosophical view, evolution really means the development of seeds into powers, so to say. The development of something that is there from the beginning but needs to be expressed. Now, as we are going to see, whatever can be developed is not the real. In what sense? The real is perfect in itself. The real cannot accept any kind of change, because anything that changes, sooner or later, ceases to be. You know, something that changes is because it has parts, so to say. If something has parts, it can be broken. I'm talking in a more or less general metaphorical way, but the idea is that whatever is real is perfect in itself and doesn't need anything to be added. But the expression of the real could change and could improve. For example, we have gold. The gold, we could say, is perfect in itself. Now, we could use that gold to create a piece with no particular form, or we can develop our skill to create a beautiful form out of this gold. In either case, the gold is just gold, didn't change. But the expression, the form that the gold takes, can go from something amorphous to something beautiful. So in the evolution of the cosmos, in a certain way, we could say that this is what happens. The expression of the real can become more closer to the real. Plato would say that these things that we perceive are shadows of the real, so images. So these images may be closer to the real or not. Whenever we want to explain these things, we are always talking in symbolic ways. It's not something that we can really grasp with our intellect, because the sense of purpose, one question that usually comes is why? Why, if the real doesn't gain anything from it, why does the real put forth this process of evolution? Now, I'm not sure that there is an answer to that. I mean, there are many answers in philosophies, and theosophy gives an answer. But ultimately speaking, I don't even know if there has to be an answer. The question of why belongs to the particular state of consciousness that we call mind. But, for example, if you describe to somebody some qualities that derive from love. You would say, well, when you love something, you are able to sacrifice yourself for that you love, for the object of your love. You are able to do this and that. And the person could ask, if the person doesn't know what love is, could ask, now, why would you do it? Well, when you are in love, there is not a why. Does it have to be a why for you to do it? The very fact of being in love implies these things. So why does the real put forth all this unreality? Maybe there is not a why, it's just the nature of things. Actually, Blavatsky proposes that. She says, it's just the nature of things. The manifestation of a cosmos and the period of sleep are just two aspects of the real. It's the nature of the real. So now that we got out of the way that question, that is the first one that usually comes, let us see just the process and not so much the why. Although it is always very interesting, and I always encourage to inquire into the whys. Not necessarily because we are going to get an answer, but the fact of inquiring into these first principles develops an ability in our mind or in our consciousness to perceive things that are beyond the apparent, beyond what we usually see. And when we begin to be able to perceive from this level, from this state of consciousness, we can live closer to the real. So it is always important, or at least at a certain stage of our growth, it is important to ponder over these things. But the answer that you come to is not so important. The act of inquiring is more important. So in The Secret Doctrine, Blavatsky describes the awakening of the universe. In the previous series, we saw that there is a cyclic manifestation of the universe. We have a cosmos that is manifested, that is created, if we want to use that word. And then after a period of time, that cosmos is dissolved, and the real, or everything else, goes to rest. I mean, the real doesn't rest or awakes. It always is. But the cosmos awakens, there is the drama of evolution, then there is a dissolution and everything rests. And then again, there is a new awakening in a cyclic way. So in The Secret Doctrine, Blavatsky starts from the moment where the cosmos is about to awaken for a new cycle of evolution. So at the moment of rest, we don't know what is there. Our mind cannot grasp it. All we can think of is that there is this one form of existence, one single element, using the word element to refer to something that is beyond consciousness and beyond matter. It is something that is a synthesis of both. But when you have consciousness, you have already separation. I can be conscious of something that is not myself. Of whatever I'm conscious is not myself. I can be conscious of my thoughts because I am not the thinking. So whenever there is consciousness, that implies duality. In a state of unity, it is said that the state is beyond anything that we know. Although we can perceive some hints in deep meditation or silence, but let us say the universe is in this state of unity with this, sometimes Blavatsky calls it primordial substance, which is at the same time unconditioned consciousness. Consciousness and substance are, as I said, are one. And everything is resting. Now suddenly, there is a vibration that thrills through the whole primordial matter. This vibration is like self-begotten. It's not produced by something outside, because there is not outside, there is only a unity. So imagine something that is quiescent, that is passive, and then suddenly there is a vibration. That vibration touches the whole universe at the same time. By universe, I mean in this homogeneous state, there are no forms yet. Now this vibration begins to produce a differentiation in this one element. Consciousness and matter begin to separate. They begin to appear as different. So little by little duality begins to set in. Little by little that was one appears to be two. It is always one, but now there is the illusion that there are two. And when this happens, once we have the two poles, the positive and negative, or the self and the non-self, then the relationship between the two bring a third element. You know, for example, if you are there, I am here, but I cannot see you, I cannot hear you. If there is no relationship between us, then there is, to me, you don't exist. And maybe I don't exist either. But the things appear only when there is these three aspects: the self, the non-self, and the relationship. And this is what in most traditions they call God. You know, God is in many traditions talked as being triple, trinities or triads. So we have here what in Theosophy is called the Logos, the manifested Logos. Logos means word. You know, in the Gospel of St. John it says at the beginning was the Word, and that word is Logos because that Gospel I think was written in Greek. Logos is a Greek word. So this Logos is the first word, the manifested word. And this is like the first universal consciousness that appears. Before the manifested Logos, as we said, everything was a unity. Although there was differentiation, there was still a unity, and it is only with the manifested Logos that appears a universal mind. Now we have consciousness, now we have matter, and they really appear to be different. Ultimately speaking, they are never different, but we can talk about consciousness and matter as if they were different because we perceive it in that way. So it is with this Logos that consciousness and matter appear to be separate. And the secret doctrine says, then the Logos lifts the veil of reality and sets the stage for the drama of evolution, which is the great illusion. So the idea is that there is a veil of reality, and the Logos lift the veil, and then you see the stage and all the things that are going to be there, which are just an illusion. It's a play. So the drama of evolution, from a certain point of view, is like a play. We will see why. This can be really meaningful to see the drama of evolution as a play. You know, when you are in a play, you are given a character. You may be a king, you may be a robber, you may be a wife, you may be whatever you are. And you are supposed to fulfill a certain role. You have to act as a king if you are a king. And if you are following the play, you cannot switch and say halfway, oh, I'm tired of being the wife, I want to be the king. You just follow the play. From a certain point of view, the personality that we take in our life, what we are now, this is just a role that was assigned to us. And it's not for us to try to change it. Now, how is this useful, or how is this important? Because we have this idea that I should be in control. I should control the environment, myself, I should do this or that. Well, yeah, that is true if you think that you are here to do something. But if you are here to realize something, then the action is not so important. If you are here to realize what is true and what is falsehood, then maybe following the role in a certain way is how you can realize what is true and what is false. And we are going to see this during the whole series. But let us go back to the idea that the Logos lifts the veil of reality. Of course, this is just an image. How can you lift reality? Reality is always there. But it's the image of a stage, the veil where everything is homogeneous is reality. So the Logos lifts the veil. There is the stage. Now the drama of evolution is going to start. And the secret doctrine says the Logos shuts out the real and only allows the entities to see the unreal for the time being. So the first thing that happens once the Logos appears, or that has to happen, is the setting up of the stage. The Logos can be seen as a fire, as a flame. Each one of the sparks that form this flame are what we could call our spirit, our monads. In Theosophy, we use the word monad. A monad means one. It's like a center of consciousness, which is really one with everything. Just like in the fire, it's not that the fire are really a collection of sparks that are separated. And this idea of the sparks and the fire, well, the fire is just sparks that are all together. Just like if we say that the ocean is a collection of drops of water, but the drops are not really separated. So these divine sparks that are animated in each one of us are really the great fire. They are not different. But we could say, for example, if you have the sun and you have a tree, and the tree has a lot of leaves, the sun is only one. The light that goes to the tree is one homogeneous light, but then each leaf is reflecting that light with a particular spark. That particular spark, you could say, is my spirit, my monad. Well, it's actually the homogeneous life, but it reflects, because there are different leaves, it seems that there are different sparks. So because there are different bodies in all of us, it seems that we have a particular spirit, a particular reflection of the one. But actually, it's only the one that is reflecting on all our bodies, which ultimately speaking are nothing but the one. But don't let us get too complicated there. We will explore that later. So the first stage, as I said, is setting up the stage. What this means is that when the Logos appears, you know, we already discussed in the previous series that there are different planes, different dimensions. In the Theosophical view, the universe is composed of, if we want to say it that way, different dimensions. So all these that I was talking about, the Logos, are, let's say, on the two higher dimensions. Sometimes it is said the three higher planes. Actually, I don't want to get into too much, but there is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, there is the Logos as a unity, and then the Logos as the 7 great hierarchies of beings that we are going to explore in the next week. But the idea is that these higher planes are at the level of the Logos. The first thing that happens now is the creation of all the lower planes on which the process of evolution will take place. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We explained last series why there are 7 planes. You know, the combination out of these 3 elements gives 7 basic components, just like with the colors. We have the white light, that is a unity. We have the 3 basic colors, and then we have 7 colors. So the idea is that the first thing that happens is that the different planes of the universe are created. Each plane is a little denser. It's in each plane, or with each plane, the divine spark is more caught up in matter. The idea is that the divine sparks, which are all part of the Logos, once the planes are set up, the divine sparks will come and immerse themselves on all the planes, the lower planes of the universe. So in Theosophy, it is said that evolution follows, and not only in Theosophy, in Hinduism, and the Greeks also would talk about this, follows 2 general motions. One in which the divine goes deep into matter, and another stage in which the divine goes back into the spiritual realm. So for example, in Hinduism, this branch of movement is called pravriti. I don't know if it is important for you to remember this, so I'm not going to write it down, but pravriti marga, the path of getting more into qualities, into differentiation. And then the path of coming back is nivriti marga. That's the opposite. You know, the path of getting rid of everything that you acquire. Now, what's the purpose of this? The general purpose of this? Why does the divine spark go deep into matter to go back to the spiritual realms? One explanation can be found in the Bible, in the parable of the prodigal son. What it is said is that the monads, let's see the parable. You have the son that is with his father at home. Now, he's there because he was born there. It's not a decision. It's not something that he chose. It was given to him. Now, when he grows up, he learns that there is something, a city out there, something that is not home. And of course, he's curious. Unfortunately, one essential aspect of consciousness is curiosity. You know, we are curious. We do things because we have this thirst to experience. In Hinduism, this thirst is called Trishna or Tanha. It's a thirst to experience. So you can see it in your life. You can see it everywhere. So the son has the thirst to experience the world. So he goes to the city. In the city, he has a lot of experiences. He has pleasure and pain. He does good and evil. And after he goes through all that, he comes eventually to the realization, you know, being at home with my father is what I really want to do. So he goes back home with the father. And now you could say, well, he wasted that time. He ended up being back home. He, you know, could have never have gone out, and he could have spared all the suffering that he experienced in the city. But that is not true, because the first stage where he was with the father just by being born there is corruptible. You know, when he heard that there was a city, he needed to see what it was. But now that he knows the city, he cannot be corrupted again, in the sense of he's with the Father because he chooses so, because he knows. And now, even though he knows that there are more cities, he doesn't need that. He already knows. So that state is uncorruptible. There are no temptations that can affect the stage, because he knows, he went through that. So the idea is that the monad goes through the process of evolution and goes back to the divine state, but there is a fundamental change. There is now a knowledge or a self-awareness. So the idea is that, as we said, these monads are all sparks of the one. They begin by being, let us say here, unconsciously one. They are one because that's what they are. It's sometimes I frequently give this example, like a baby. You know, the baby is said to have not to have an awareness of separation. So he feels one with the mother and with everything around, but he's unconscious of that oneness. Then, little by little, the person develops a strong sense of I-ness. I am different from everything else. And eventually, in the course of evolution, the individual consciousness comes back to the realization I'm one with everything. And we have an enlightened being, or a mystic. Now, the state of unity, or the awareness of unity in the mystic, is completely different from the awareness of unity in the baby. Now it is a self-conscious unity. So the monad goes from being unconsciously one to be consciously separated. You know, now we feel we are separated, but we have developed an awareness of that. We have developed a center of consciousness that says, I am separated from you, but I am. In this part of the journey, the sense of I amness is developed. Now, of course, at the bottom, this sense of I amness is very strong and separated from everything else. Now, in the second branch of the journey, the monad goes back, begins to realize who we really are, what that I amness really means, and it goes finally to be consciously, just like here, the consciousness was acquired, and it goes back to the unity, so now the monad is consciously one. And that's the difference between an enlightened being and you and me. You know, we are exactly the same. The enlightened being knows he's one with everything, he's beyond any sense of separation, and we don't. That's the only difference. But the divine spark is exactly the same. If we could right now, we have everything to be an enlightened being. But we have not realized the truth. So it's not that we have to acquire something so much. We have to realize. That's why I was saying this is a play. We are going to see this in the last of the talks, but this is a play. And just do your role and always try to see who or what you really are. It doesn't make a difference if you are a scientist or if you work on the street digging holes. It doesn't matter if you are a woman or if you are a man. Just if you take your role and live it in a way that will allow you to see what you are and what you are not, then that is the whole purpose of your particular role, as a king or as a beggar. So we are going to see all that later. But the main purpose is realization. Now in Theosophy, as we are going to see, it is said, well, yes, you could be enlightened right now, but the fact that you are not is because you have not developed certain things, or you have not learned how to raise your consciousness. So it's not that right now, okay, I don't want to get into that now. We will go through all this in the last talk, but there is something that we have to do. But essentially, that thing that we have to do is so that the real can shine through. So, for example, there is a light behind the door. You don't have to create a light, but if you want to see it, you have to open the door. So if you don't open the door, you won't see the light. So we will see what is it that we have to do so that we can realize who we really are. So this is the general aim of evolution, and we are going to see a little the processes of how this happens. I don't know if there is any question at this point before I go. Here Ed wants to quick bring the mic before he yes.
So this is often presented as the objective, how the objective world comes and evolves. It could also be seen, one, that there really isn't this distinction between the subjective and the objective, that this is a description of our consciousness. You could almost look at it, you know, when you're asleep and when you're waking up, and how the world appears and how the world gets completely full, and you get tired and you go back to sleep, even on that, you know, gross level. But it's also a description of the process of enlightenment.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's important not to put it out there as something that's remote from ourselves.
Not to put out there, you mean the real, as if the real, for what do you mean?
Well, we're going to go into descriptions about all these levels and processes, and supposedly we're going to have in mind, you know, like a scientific description of how the universe appears and, you know, creates planets and disappear. So that's our sort of our default way of looking at it, but it's closer than that.
Yeah, all the ideas, I mean, all these ideas are, I think, are planned just to counteract the quality of the mind that we have. If our mind wouldn't be an obstacle to the perception of truth, we don't need any ideas. So all these ideas are because we have a wrong perception of the world. These ideas are not the perception of truth, but are at the same level of your wrong perceptions. The ideas are trying to make you see things in a certain way where maybe you can see the real. So it's like a medicine. If you are not sick, you don't need a medicine. The teachings can be seen as a medicine. If you are not ill, you don't need any teaching, because the real is beyond mind. Yes, there is a question.
I suppose you can hear.
Yeah, but it's for the people on the internet. Yeah.
So we can say that we are always unconsciously one, and that actually is always within us, and then throughout life or experience, we are practically being taught to not to be that, and then we actually lose trust in who we really are, and then we have to learn how to trust again, practically, and go back. So we are never actually not unconsciously one. We are always that, but we forget. And
yeah.
That what?
Yeah, exactly. we are what we are, but we have to come back to be what we are. So, because we forgot what we are. So it's kind of like that. So yes, every idea that any philosophy presents has a certain purposes, but these are means, not ends in themselves. So for example, there is a mind or an aspect of our mind that cannot grasp the reality, because that mind is engrossed in whatever is concrete. And that is a mind that we use for our daily living for the most part. You know, our normal life doesn't push us to try to perceive things in a holistic way, from a higher perspective. We have to take care of our body, of our house, of our family, or whatever it is. And it's a mind that is related to the concrete. So that mind cannot see the real. Now, when you start thinking about these things, what you are doing is calling forth that other aspect of your mind, your consciousness, that is able to. And this is like in anything, you know, if you are not used to listen to a certain music, the first time you listen to it, you cannot appreciate it. Now, if you persevere and you pay attention to it, then you develop the ability to see. I remember there was a person that used to work with colors, and he could distinguish so many shades of brown, for example, that for us were all just brown. But he had been paying so much attention to this that had developed that subtlety, and he was able to distinguish things that for us they pass by. So one aspect of, or one aim of these teachings is to wake up that aspect of your mind that is able to perceive the real. Now, if you get stuck in the intellectual aspect of the teachings, then you are not really awakening this subtler mind. And the other aspect of the teachings is, as you said, is to generate in you trust, to give you a framework where you can understand. You know, for example, the idea of injustice. The idea of injustice is really disturbing to many people. Now, if I come and tell you, you know, there is no injustice at all. There is this karma, is universal justice. Whatever seems to be unjust to you is not really unjust. Then that idea may allow you to say, okay, stop worrying, oh, this is unjust. So when you stop worrying about that, you can see life from a different perspective. Then you are not thinking in terms of karma anymore. But that idea counteracts your anxiety about injustice. Now you know, yeah, there is justice and it doesn't matter. And the idea, you know, had its own purpose, and now you don't need it anymore when you really get it. So this is the purpose of ideas. Yeah, wait.
Going back to when you were talking about trust, Marina says, when we learn to trust again, we do it more consciously than when we started out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's similar also to the prodigal son idea.
Following up on what you said about injustice, the paradox really is that the more you realize that there is no injustice, that it's all karma, then you are more able to do something about the injustice, mm-hmm. because you're not emotional. When the more emotionally you are involved with something, the harder it is for you to actually do something about it. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a critical part of finding out that yes, there is no injustice, it's all karma, but it doesn't mean don't do anything about it. Yeah,
we'll talk about that when dealing with karma. I just was, giving an example of how an idea can counteract an obstacle to perception. And then the idea is not necessarily useful. Once it produces the effect, then you are not constantly going back to the idea.
One of the aspects of the lower mind, the detailed mind, is that it tends to jump from one opposite to the other. So if I say there's injustice, and then you say there's no injustice, then the concrete mind says, oh, there's no injustice. While the truth, which the higher mind can perceive, is there's neither injustice nor justice. Mm-hmm. Or some combination, mm-hmm. or something beyond either or mind. Mm-hmm. And this helps train the mind to not automatically jump to the opposite conclusion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's important to know the place of ideas and models, and when they need to be, left behind, or what's the purpose. Because some people think knowing is the aim. So if I know all this, I know theosophy. Well, not really. Knowing is the first step. Knowing is for you to stop worrying, to stop messing up, but now you have to perceive the truth. The knowledge is not the perception of truth. They are not the same. Anyway, so let us see how the process happens, because you have this divine spark, the monad. This is how in theosophy this divine spark is called, the monad. You have the divine spark that begins to take as vestures different degrees of matter. So, for example, coming to something more related to our daily life consciousness, we are able to perceive the physical world because we have a physical body. Once the physical body dies, according to theosophy and many spiritual traditions, consciousness is still there, but it cannot perceive the physical world because there is no physical body anymore. So if you want to perceive a particular dimension of the universe, you need a body. Consciousness, a pure consciousness, needs a body that will respond to that particular dimension. So what the monad needs is all these kind of experiences, different experiences that will wake up that slumbering perception of the real. So what the monad does is to collect, to create a body, so to say, on each plane, so that when it comes to the physical plane, the monad is surrounded by a lot of matter. It's like you have your hand, your bare hand can distinguish, can feel very subtle things. If you put a glove, then it is a thin one, suppose, but you lose some of the sensitivity. Then you put another one, and then another one, and finally a boxing glove, and how much can you feel? So from a certain point of view, the monad, it's like that. It's surrounded by a lot of matter that doesn't allow to perceive the real.
Is the descent of the monad into matter a very slow process, mm-hmm. or relatively quick?
Well, for whom? From the point of view of the third logos, or in Hinduism.
However you wish to express the answer.
In Hinduism, they call it Brahma, and our whole evolution in the planet takes 1 day of Brahma, which for us is like 4 million or whatever it is millions of years. So time is really relative, but from our perspective, it takes a long time. The monad, actually, the process of evolution is very gradual. So the monad comes to the fourth plane. We have 1, 2, 3. And the idea is that in theosophy that the evolution has place on the 4 lower planes. These planes are more like divine planes, let's say. and these are human planes. Now, there are all kinds of different classifications, so just take this for the time being. So the monad comes to this plane, to the fourth plane, and stays there. All these rounds that I'm drawing are like cycles of evolution. Stays there and little by little assimilates the matter of that plane, begins to awaken to that particular plane. At the beginning, it's like even that happens with a person. When we go to sleep, we are not aware in our sleeping. The idea is that with evolution, little by little, consciousness begins to be aware of that state of consciousness that we call dream. And then eventually, the person can be fully aware in the state of consciousness that we call dream. So the same with everything. The baby also, when the baby just comes to the physical plane, the awareness is very feeble at the beginning. But little by little, it begins to respond to more and more, and consciousness begins to be really complex. As we were saying this week in a different class, you know, if you see it at the emotional level, a baby only knows two kinds of emotion, pleasure and pain. But as the baby grows, these two basic emotions develop such a wealth of shades and different emotions and mixtures that we get to an adult that is able to feel, you know, almost an infinite kinds of emotions or shades of emotions. So the idea is that the monad stays on one particular plane and little by little builds a body, then begins to awaken to the plane, and then begins to master the plane in a certain way. Then once the evolution is over there, it goes back down to a more material plane. And again, it goes through different cycles of evolution, and then down to the other one, and then down to the last one, the lower one, which is the physical plane. This is where we are now, undergoing our current cycle of evolution. Now, the idea is that once the evolution on this physical plane is over, the monad will go on, now on a subtler plane, on the same one that it was coming from, but now on this side, there is this development of the sense of oneness, of unity. So the whole process goes on again here, you know, until it comes back to the first plane that it began, and there is a period of rest before starting again, because this happens again 7 times. So this is what is called rounds and chains in Theosophy. I don't want to go too much into that detail, but it is important to see that the cycle is really, as you were asking, is a really long cycle, because from the point of view of human consciousness, as I said, from the point of view of the divine, everything is a day or so. But it's a very slow cycle because our consciousness is really slow in awakening. But we can change that. You know, in most human beings, as we are going to see, is like what Besan used to say, they are just marching in place. You know, they think they are moving. They are moving like if they were advancing, moving forward, but they are marching in place. Why? Because they are in life to look for comfort, to look for gratification, not to discover what we really are. So we are chasing pleasure, and we are not discovering anything. You know, there is a little growth that always happens just by the mere force of experience. You know, you can burn your fingers so many times until you say, oh, this is not good. You know, but if you burn your finger the first time, and if you are trying to find out what this is about, then probably with burning it one or twice, then you get it, and then you can grow faster. Why faster? What does it matter? After all, time is an illusion. Well, it is just like being in a nightmare. If you see somebody that is in a nightmare, the nightmare is an illusion, but you want to wake the person up because the person is suffering from an illusion, but the suffering is there. So our consciousness that is caught up in the illusion is suffering. So we can suffer for 1,000,000 years, or we can suffer for 1,000 years. Well, probably we would choose suffer only for 1,000 years. So the idea is just at the level of, eventually you won't suffer anymore, because eventually, the real is always there, and it will show to yourself whether you like it or not, but it may take a long time, so long time of suffering. Yeah, there is a question.
Yes, Marina asks, is there anything in Theosophical literature about the evolution taking place on the 3 divine levels?
Not much. As we are going to see in the next talk, all these planes are planes of evolution for different kinds of consciousness. What we could call divine beings or celestial beings, they are all on different planes, and they have their own evolution. And there is, some evolution on those planes, but we know very, very little. I mean, we know more than we really know. We don't even know what the evolution means on all these planes. It's just a diagram that we have, and it has a certain meaning because it can, as we are going to see during the series, it can give you certain perspective. But to be able to draw a diagram doesn't mean that we really know what is going on. So if we know anything, we know very little down here. We don't even have a diagram for the higher planes, if that is a real question. Do we have a diagram? Yes.
If the universe is reoccurring and we start from a homogeneity and then go into manifestation and all this evolution occurs and then ultimately ends, does the next manifestation carry with it things that happened during a previous manifestation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another tricky question, but there is an answer. An answer offered, not necessarily that is the truth. But yes, the idea is, you go to sleep and your physical consciousness is dissolved. Now, when you awaken again, you come back, to what you were. In yoga, when a person enters in samadhi, it is said that the personal consciousness is dissolved. But there are left certain things that are called vasanas, which is like a memory. It's like a mark, a trace, that when the person goes out of samadhi, it regains the previous consciousness. Of course, changed, because the experience of samadhi, if it was a real experience and not just trance, modifies the vasanas that were there before, like these memories. But when consciousness comes back from that state of unity in samadhi to differentiation, it regains the memory of what the consciousness was. So in the same way, when the same happens, for example, when we die on the physical plane. There are some processes after death that we are going to see in one of the series. And then you are in a plane where you exhaust all personal memory, but then when you are coming back, there are all these vasanas that in this case are called skandhas, waiting for you there. So consciousness comes back and takes the memory of what it was. Not the memory in the sense of, I remember I was a king in my past life. The memory in the sense of the qualities of what you were personally. So in the same way, the idea is that when the whole universe is dissolved and only the plane of reality remains, still there are these vasanas which, when a new universe is created, are taken again by the centers of consciousness. So a monad that was human in one particular manifestation, if that monad finished the human evolution, it is reabsorbed in the one, but then when a new universe appears, that monad, again, we don't know if it is the same, but the memory of what that monad was is there, and that monad now will be a celestial being, let's suppose, in the next stage of evolution. So the idea is that, yes, there is a continuity, relatively speaking. A continuity, as you say, a river is the same. The water is constantly flowing, but you can talk about the same river. So probably you can talk about the same monad that has a continuity from one universe to the next. And the idea is that there is this evolution, constant evolution of the monad. Any other question before we finish? We will keep exploring all this during these 4 talks. I just wanted to set up the general idea of evolution. All right, then next week we are going to see this process a little more, but from the point of view of the intelligence that is behind. All this question about intelligent design or just blind evolution, is there a God, or things happen just randomly. Well, we will explore how Theosophy sees this view, and what's the role of evolution, of intelligence behind all this process. So thank you for coming, and I'll see you next week.